Cops of Reddit. What famous people have you pulled over, and how did it go down? My dad pulled over Clint Eastwood. I guess this was just after they started requiring licenses to drive motorcycles in California. He pulled him over because he was driving squirrely, like he didn't really know how to ride. His response to license issue was, man, next thing you know you'll need a license to ride a horse. Not a police officer, but I was a New York City park ranger in Central Park. I asked Christian Amanpour from CNN to put her dog on a leash, and she said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "I don't care who you are. Put your dog on a leash." My father was a police officer for 27 years, and in one day he pulled over Paul Newman, who, apparently, was notorious for speeding. So, my dad goes to cite him, and gets a call for an accident that needed assistance down the road. Then sometime shortly thereafter, my father pulled him over again, and Newman allegedly groaned, "Not you again." I gave Werner Herzog a speeding ticket in the Hollywood Hills in the early 2010s. He was very polite and even shook my hand. Nice fellow. I'm not a cop, but when I was in school, one of the school cops was watching our class for a little while, and he decided to tell us about some chick he arrested a few nights earlier. He arrested some lady for drunk driving, and she kept screaming at him to look her up and that she's famous. He looked up her name, and it turns out she was on The Voice. He watched the video on YouTube of her singing terribly and being an ass to the judges. He arrested her and found out she was wanted in Louisiana, so he had her sent all the way from San Angelo, Texas to bumfuck nowhere, Louisiana. Moral of the story: shut up. You're not famous. Not a cop, but I was working as a lifeguard, and we had the beach red flagged, no swimming, for rough surf. There was this girl swimming, so I hopped on my ATV and headed down to call her out of the water. Her swimming was weird. I couldn't put my finger on it right away. Part of determining whether or not I have to rescue someone is to evaluate their swimming stroke. She wasn't in obvious distress, just swimming around in her weird sort of way. I blow my whistle to get her attention, and she starts swimming back to shore. At this point I should probably mention that we had a surf contest going on and there were a bunch of pro surfers in town because of it. She walks out the water, and at this point I realize why her swim stroke was weird. She only has one arm. Now I've got to tell Bethany Hamilton that the water is too rough for swimming. I used to live in Bergenfield, New Jersey a few years back, and I think Chris Rock lives there, or Englewood, somewhere in Bergen County. My buddy was a Teaneck cop and said he pulled him over for going 55 in a 30 and then Jay is mad strict with driving. He said Chris was awesome and even gave him an autograph after the speeding ticket. Former police cadet and dispatcher here. I was on a ride along and was told this story. So this officer pulls this car over for speeding. She then suspects the driver of being drunk. She calls in his driver's license to run it. The dispatcher tells her, "You have Nick Nolte pulled over? Do you know who he is? He's a movie star." The officer is young and doesn't know who Nick Nolte is. Turns out he wasn't drunk. He was just being Nick Nolte. She gave him a warning and sent him on his way. My coworker wrote Wes Craven a ticket. He didn't know who he was, and so when he gave him the ticket, he just was like, "Here's your ticket, Mr. Craven." My coworker told me that if he knew he wrote a ticket to the Nightmare on Elm Street guy, he would have issued a warning instead. My coworker is also from Kosovo, so when he tells it with his accent it's extra funny. My father-in-law was a police officer for many years and often regales the story of how, during a routine traffic stop, he met the great Kit Duncan. I wasn't a patrol officer, but rather the sheriff's deputy at Aspen's Airport, Sardie Field. I had to threaten to tow both Kurt Russell's and Hunter Thompson's vehicles more than once when they left them where they weren't supposed to, parked right in front of the airport. Hunter was Hunter and just mumbled and groused, and Kurt usually just waved and smiled. Dirty violators. The both of them. I can still remember Russell's license plate, VCD 711. My dad was a cop. Pulled over none other than Marilyn Manson for an unsafe signal lane change. He was bragging the day it happened, in the early 2000s. Said he was nondescript and low-key, apologetic and did not act like a big shot above the law. Some police officer pulled over Kit Harington once for speeding or something. He said he'd let him go if he told him if he's really dead in Game of Thrones. He told him. He let him go. True story. At least according to Kit. My friend's dad arrested 6x99. When I was a cop I pulled Blake Shelton over once. I walked up the window, went through my little spiel, hello my name is Officer Juskvin with the city police. The reason I've stopped you tonight is insert crime. May I see your license and insurance verification? He gives me his stuff and it's really late, so I haven't even figured out it's him. Yet I'm just thinking this guy looks familiar. He was really friendly and pretty apologetic, super nice guy. I wanted to ask for an autograph or picture, but felt like it would have been unprofessional. My dad ran into Bo Jackson emerging from a patch of woods in camouflage carrying a bow, possibly poaching / trespassing, right outside his gated community in a woods. Burridge, Illinois. They just chatted about the large local buck they both apparently knew of for a few minutes and parted ways. Personally, also cop, I never dealt with anyone famous, unless you count the kids of the Chicago Bears radio broadcaster. Angelo Russell. He was respectful and did not mention who he was. I did not know it was him till I recognized his name and looked him up. I'll let him go with a warning on some chicken shit windows in traffic stop. So, from the comments here we can conclude that not many police officers use Reddit. Not a police officer, but I've never pulled over a famous person. Once a member of parliament was detained and put to jail for being too wasted. After an hour this MP told me that he/she wants to get out, but I refused since he/she was still too drunk. Then MP said to me, Aladonna, do you know who I am? Question mark? And I answered, Arise. But Donna, do you know as an lawmaker that it applies to everyone? And slammed MP's cell door. He/she got pretty pissed, but surprisingly did not file any complaints against me. Typus. Kind of similar. My dad had a seizure, and one of the fire department guys was a retired NASCAR truck series driver. Dude was chill as hell, and told some stories for me and my siblings to calm us down. I gave the long-haired guy, early 2000s I believe, from Hootie and the Blowfish a ticket for no leash on his dog. We were driving on a small beach island and had her standing on a side road with his dog and no leash. He told my partner and I he was in a band and we asked which band he was in, and he told us. We both were like, when I've never heard of this band. Lying. I said Hootie? Question mark. Good luck with that, is it rap? And he laughed and said no. He was cool. Still gave him the ticket. Former police officer here. I was on patrol when I saw a group of people trying to cross the street on a very busy and dangerous 4-lane highway in the dark. I pulled over and loaded them up and drove them across. It was the band till Tuesday. Nice people. I have the same name as someone famous. When I get pulled over by the cops it doesn't help me any. The fact I look nothing like them and live in a different county doesn't help. Of course I am not a police officer, but NASCAR driver Kurt Busch was pulled over once. He tried the Aradona, do you know who I am routine. It did not work. For what it is worth, Heather's a lot less stuck up nowadays. Not exactly what you're looking for, but relatable. My father was a repo man for a short time in Newark, NJ. He ended up getting a call to put a car on the hook for unpaid bills. As he put the car on the hook, a man started running out to the street shouting, "Hey man, that's my car. Don't you know who I am?" My father had no idea. The man then proceeded to tell my father that he's Redman. My father responded, "Yeah, well I'm white man. Next time pay your bill," and drove off with the car. Sam Elliott has a ranch just outside of Brownsville, which is just off to the left of nowhere. A buddy of mine is a deputy for the county and has run into him in the store buying milk or whatever. One of my buddy's coworkers had to go out to the ranch to take a report when Mrs. Elliott got bit by a dog or something. The next day, my friend pulled them over without realizing who it was initially until he ran the plate. When he went up, he greeted them and asked how she was doing, and she was all, "Oh, that's so nice of you to ask. Everybody always wants to talk to my husband, like he's some movie star or something." I guess she wrote a letter to the sheriff about how thoughtful it was of him to ask, and what a nice young man he was. I once saw a cop pull over Chuck Norris As he was in a good mood, Chuck Norris let the cop off with a warning. Seriously, please like and subscribe, and comment something nice, or tell me your non-existent story. I'm literally a hard-working Reddit slave. My dad is a retired NYPD cop. Many years ago he pulls over a limo in Brooklyn speeding on highway zooming towards Manhattan. Driver pulls over and admits to speeding and begs my dad not to look in back. He naturally looks in back and there is Johnny Mathis and another guy stark naked going at it. Johnny Mathis begs him not to say anything and my dad says no prob. When he returns to precinct, there is an envelope there for him. 2 front row tickets to see him perform at the old Rainbow Room in Rockefeller Center. He goes with his fiancée, now my mom, and I was born 9 months later. Thanks Johnny. If it wasn't for him, I might not even be here.